Thank you, Michael. I'm not used to speaking with a mic. I'm the father. Can I speak without it? Is that okay? I think I'm the father. Me personally, this is an exciting day to come here to London and to see so many people talking about and learning about the impact that there we go. Just don't let my kids know that I needed it. So anyways, as I was saying, so many companies are here learning about financial technology and the fintech industry and the impact and disruption that it's causing to traditional financial institutions. Again, these are banks, brokerages, investment houses that have been around for hundreds of years, many of them. And the way that financial technology is changing the way that they do business and the way that we as consumers interact with them. And today, what I really want to focus on is harnessing the power of data-driven market intelligence to help you grow your business. And just by, this works? We got a technical difficulty. There we go. Okay, so just by means of background, SimilarWeb is the market intelligence company for the digital world. We provide digital insights on every website and every mobile app across every industry in over 190 countries around the globe. And what kind of data are we talking about in insights? We're talking about traffic, we're talking about audience interest, we're talking about engagement, we're talking about keyword analysis, popular pages and the like that really help you understand, track, and grow your digital market share. And, I like to call this our ego slide, but we're really very humbled to have over 3,200 companies around the globe who rely on and trust SimilarWeb to provide them the insights to grow their businesses and capture market share. Okay? That's enough of the infomercial. So as you guys may have noticed, I'm not British. I often say you could take the boy out of New York. You can't take New York out of the boy. But even though I'm not from the UK, using our data and our insights, I can share with you who are the top sites for the financial industry here in the UK. And you see, again, the number one site over here is PayPal, followed by a number of the large banks, Lloyd's, Halifax, Barclays, Santander, and et cetera. And I can also show you that information for the top mobile apps here in the UK as well. And here, not surprising, what you're seeing are a number of the popular banking mobile app applications. But I think the question that we ask ourselves is, where does all this traffic come from? How do consumers go about and find and select the financial institution that they're going to visit and that they're going to transact with? And for me, what I decided to do, I thought was interesting, is compare and contrast the UK market versus a market I'm most familiar with, which is the US. In the US, what we see is about 60% of the traffic that goes to finance industry websites comes from direct traffic, meaning that people are typing in to their browser www.chase.com or www.bankofamerica.com, or they've bookmarked the page. That's direct traffic. And only 23% is coming from referral sites or affiliate sites, and only 13%, again, for the financial industry, is coming from organic search, your classic Google search. Compare that to what we're seeing here in the UK. In the UK, interestingly, only 42% of the traffic to the finance industry is coming from direct. A much higher percentage, 33%, is coming from referrals, and 21% is coming from search. Now, what does that tell us? What does that mean? Could be any number of things, but I think for one insight that we have here is that perhaps the UK consumer is more apt to be more inquisitive, wants to learn more before he visits a site, wants to compare, and may not have that same brand loyalty to one specific financial institution, and actually is trying to find what the right fit is for him or her. When we drill down a little deeper and now starting to look at those referrals, remember here in the US it was 23%, in the UK again 31% of all traffic going to the finance industry. So in the US we see a number, and the same thing in the UK, a number of the top affiliate sites actually rank in the top 25 visited pages within the finance industry. So in the US, you see as number 7, right, is not some bank, not some investment house, it's actually Credit Karma, an affiliate site. And here in the UK, actually, you see them ranked much higher than you see them in the US in terms of the rankings of where those traffic sites are. Interestingly enough, both in the US and in the UK, the number 1 finance site is actually PayPal. So as we start thinking about this and thinking that affiliate is so important to grabbing market share in the finance industry, both in the US and the UK, I thought it'd be interesting for a minute to walk through what I thought were 2 interesting case studies, and hopefully see where that brings us in terms of understanding, tracking, and growing your market share, both in the UK and globally. I'm going to focus on two different companies. They both happen to be US-based companies, companies I'm a bit familiar with. And the first one is a company called NerdWallet. How many people have ever heard of NerdWallet? Let's raise your hand. Yeah, I didn't think there were going to be that many. So we have one in the audience. Truth be told, before I started preparing for this presentation, hadn't heard of them before either. NerdWallet is an affiliate company, privately held, founded in 2009, raised about $70 million to date. Last round, they raised a significant amount of money from IVP. I said based in San Francisco, rumored to be doing about $100 million of revenue annually. And this is NerdWallet's homepage. And what you see is they are a source of content on a variety of financial products, from credit card to loans to banking, checking, savings, credit score, and that kind of information. And they make their money on referrals to other destination sites. What I decided to do was take NerdWallet and compare it against Credit Karma. If you remember from that previous slide that we saw, Credit Karma was the number 7 ranked destination site for the finance industry in the US. Interestingly, NerdWallet is number 45, okay? Credit Karma, when you start looking at it, is about 6 times the size of NerdWallet. So interesting comparison. And now here, what we've done is compare the different sources of traffic of NerdWallet versus Credit Karma. So what you see over here, Credit Karma, which has been around since 2007, a strong brand in the US, gets the bulk of its traffic from direct, right? So people are familiar with it as a destination site and a source for valuable intelligence, valuable content. NerdWallet gets almost 80% of their traffic coming from organic search. And again, I want to make the distinction between organic versus paid search. Just by a show of hands, is everybody familiar with the difference? So when you have search, if you use Google as your search bar, and you type in something into the search bar, you get two sets of results. You may not notice that the first couple that are shaded often are PPC, or paid per click. So the person who has that result, that highest ranking result, is actually paying Google for that traffic. Then below you have organic search results. The organic search results actually don't cost anybody, the site, any money, and Google is just ranking them based on their algorithms of what is the best quality content or the likely answer that best fits your query. So when we look at search, we distinguish between organic search and paid search. Paid search costs money. Organic search is free, okay? And here you see that NerdWallet gets nearly 80% of their traffic from organic search. And to the point that they are the 12th most visited site in search in the finance industry in the US. A very, very strong metric. So how did they get that? It's because NerdWallet specializes in creating high quality content, because over 60 of their writers and editors are industry experts who produce content not only for them, but that get distributed and are recognized on a number of other highly qualified sites like ABC, Bloomberg, CNN, and yes, they even distribute on ESPN, which is actually a very good source for certain demographic groups, to try and capture certain demographic groups. But what did NerdWallet realize? What kind of content do they produce? What they realize, and the differentiation that they've done, is say, we want to answer the questions that consumers are asking. And what are the questions that they ask? The first one is best. What is the best fill in the blank? What is the best credit card for me? What is the best savings account? What is the best mortgage rate that I can find today? Second question is something in the form of how, right? How do I improve my credit score? How do I find a broker if I'm a first-time investor? How do I open up an IRA account, an investment, a retirement savings account? And then what do I need to do to blank? So questions of best, how, and what. And when you look at this, 1 out of every 5 keywords that drives traffic to NerdWallet includes that question best. And 1 out of every 3 includes something about credit, credit card, credit score, credit line. And so if we drill in for a second, using our popular pages feature, we could actually see what is the most popular page that is driving traffic, right, to that people are landing on. And here, this is the results of the search queries that people are doing. Over 4% of NerdWallet's traffic is coming from this page, the best credit cards. And from there, you see the landing page that they have, which again, gives you information on the best credit cards for that consumer to select, and then forwards that off to the destination, to the issuer, in order for somebody to sign up or apply for the credit card. This is an example of the high quality content that they're producing, all driven off of organic search. For NerdWallet, what's the result of having this kind of high quality traffic? So the answer is that they not only have great search and organic search results, but they have become a trusted brand. And if we look at this data over the last 24 months, you see that the amount of direct traffic, in other words, separate and apart from the organic search traffic that they're getting, the amount of direct traffic that NerdWallet is getting has increased by 2.6x, more than doubled, nearly tripled over that 24-month period, because of the fact that people were seeing such high quality content traffic that was coming off of organic search. They became a trusted brand, and ultimately they became a champion of growth. Over a 24-month period, if you look at the number of monthly visits, right? This is aggregated sources. from all different sources. You have, going back 2 years ago, they had fewer than 3 million visits per month. And now, today, they have more than 5.5 million visits every month, more than doubling over the 24-month period. I think that this is a very interesting story when we start thinking of the impact that content and using referral, affiliate, and high quality SEO search can drive your business. I'm going to pause here for a second and now look at a totally different use case. Before we do, any questions on that? Go ahead, sure. Right.
To me, thank you. To me, anecdotally, you need to be on that first page, and ideally, kind of above the fold, right?
Correct. Correct. That's true.
Right. And so, really, just my main question was: am I an anomaly there, or when you're doing organic search, is it okay to be on page 2 or page 3, or do you really have to fight, spend the time and effort to get on page 1? And then my second question for you, if you don't mind, is I believe a lot of this is B2C. For some of us here who are doing B2B, how important is that with a long sales cycle? And ideally, I end up with 200 clients across the globe, not 20 million. How important is web-based and organic marketing in a kind of B2B world?
Excellent questions. So let me answer the first one and then the second one. So just your business, what business are you in? You said B2B? No, I'm saying, and you're selling to what type of companies? Brokerage firms. Okay. So here's what I'll tell you first about the organic search. I think that the data is pretty clear that being on page 4 or page 5 in Google, isn't going to get you a whole lot of clicks. I can't say that it's 0, but it's pretty close to that. Being on the first page is important, and being above the fold is even more important. Actually, earlier in my career, I was the CFO of shopping.com, which was the comparison shopping leader. Ultimately, we took it public and then sold it to eBay. Today, it's an eBay company. And going back, this is in 2000 to 2004, even back then, we knew that being above the fold, not only in the Google results, but in our own results, right, shopping.com search results for consumers, was a dramatically higher click-through rate. And I don't think that's changed in the last 15 years. So I think that's absolutely true. And what drives that position within Google ultimately is your SEO strategy and the quality of the content, as Google's algorithm that, anybody who tells you that they could break it is, I've got a bridge to show you. But again, there are a lot of people who have insights as to how to better get a higher weighting over there within Google. And that is money well spent over there. The example that I showed, it very much is a consumer-facing focus. But what we find in our own business, and again, SimilarWeb is not a B2C company, we're a B2B company. And we find that the number of inbound inquiries that we get, inbound leads that are coming off of our content, and our content is not only content that we create, but actually content that we make available for other writers, reporters. Today, there isn't a day that goes by that the Financial Times, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Fortune, Forbes, etc., are not citing our data as the basis for some article or analysis that they're doing. And it's those things that drive a significant amount of leads into our funnel, ultimately resulting in the 3,200 customers that I talked about. So again, I think that the world that we, 20 years ago, where you had a bunch of people, doing outbound calls, was the only way to market. In certain industries and in certain very targeted industries, and if you have a very small list of customers, targeted list of customers, that may be the best way to do your marketing and outbound campaign and direct. To the extent that you have a broader based market, that you can attack, actually, you'll find that doing some of these things could be very lucrative as well. Right. Go ahead. I don't know their privately held company, but yes, I would assume is mostly on referral and the like. Again, whether it's the credit card companies or other financial institutions, right? It may be also distributing their content and getting some, distributed content fees and licensing fees. But again, they're private. I don't know. Good, great questions. Thank you. So I wanted to talk about another company. Bankrate.com. Are people familiar with Bankrate? Okay, so Bankrate has been around since 1993. Bankrate today, that in 2009, I think, they were bought out by Apex. In 2011, they went public. So Bankrate is a publicly traded company. I think they have about 400 employees. They just released Q3 earnings about a week ago. They have $320 million of revenue for the first 9 months of the year. So annualize that, they're probably about a $450 million revenue company. And again, a leader in the content as a trusted source of content, information, editorial type of content for financial products. Again, in the US, very, very popular site. Here I did a different kind of analysis, and it's a very, very interesting thing when you start looking at Bankrate. And again, Bankrate is not some young startup, that just, got 4 kids in a garage. I mean, it's a large company, publicly traded, been around since 1993. And here you could see the gray bar and the orange bar. And what we did over here was compare and look at their digital strategy, their marketing strategy from at the beginning of the year, in January 2016, and where it is today. And when you start looking at Bankrate, what you see is, again, a significant amount of their traffic at the beginning of the year, over 60%, was coming from organic search, and over 20% of their traffic was coming from referrals. Both of those are very low cost forms of traffic acquisition. Again, organic search, not costing other than producing high quality editorial content, and referrals is most likely a rev share type of arrangement. So there's no upfront cost, it's just a rev share. So if they don't make money, it doesn't cost them. What we see over here is a shift that's happening in September. In September, the percentage of organic search went down to under 50%. The percent of referral traffic dropped over 50%. And the amount of display ads and paid search, which was previously non-existent, okay, suddenly popped up. And here's what that graph looks like when we zoom in. Organic search in the first 9 months of 2016 is down 17%, from 5.3 million to 4.4 million visitors on a monthly basis. And the referral traffic is down by over 50%, from 1.8 million visits to fewer than 900,000 visitors on a monthly basis. This is a dramatic impact on what's happening to Bankrate. Now, if you're somebody at Bankrate, hopefully you're seeing this, right? And you're seeing this you don't need SimilarWeb to show you this. You're seeing this in your own, data logs, and probably seeing it in your revenue that's dropping. So what do you do? What do you do when you begin to lose healthy traffic, organic search and referral traffic? So the answer is you have to refocus, and you have to try something else in order to make up that traffic and ensure that you have that traffic in order to produce the revenue and hit your revenue guidance, particularly if you're a publicly traded company. So what did they do? We saw that in the data before. You see that suddenly Bankrate started doing a lot of paid display ads. In January, there were fewer than 50,000 visits that were generated from display ads to Bankrate. In September, we had 500,000 visits that were coming up from display ads, an increase in over 940%. And using our tools, we're able to see exactly what kind of ads they were running in order to drive that traffic. Similarly, we saw something that previously they didn't have to do. They were spending next to nothing on paid search, right? In January of 2016, generating only 22,500 thousand visits off of paid search. And in September, they had over 200,000 visits coming off of paid search, an increase of 833%. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second because now I got to put my CFO hat on. And we prepared all this stuff, and I had my analyst, double check the data. I said, this is really crazy. And I stopped and I said, if that's what's happening, their margin must be falling faster, faster than one of my kids' math scores. And I said, would we see this in their financial reports? And so as I mentioned, Bankrate actually released their quarterly earnings about a week ago. Their 9 months ended 2016 gross profit margin was 48.6%. The comparable period in 2015 was 54.1%, a difference of 5.5 percentage points, from 54.1 to 48.6. And when you read through the MD&A of their SEC filing, they say, well, cost of revenues went up because of, one of the things they say is paid advertising to the tune of $27.6 million. Okay? Now, that was the increase in the budgeted spend in first 9 months of 2016 versus the first 9 months of 2015, comparable periods. We are now seeing this in our data, that this is what's happening. When you see a slide that looks like this, Bankrate had no choice but to reposition and in order to meet their revenue numbers, to drive traffic from other sources, even if it costs them money. I will point out that the stock price of Bankrate is down 22% since the beginning of the year. Anyway, that's a side point. By the way, my takeaway from this is that if you're an investor, there is a tremendous amount of insight and data that you can get as an investor using data-driven market intelligence. And that was, we have many of our customers are, the private equity firms as well as public money managers who are using this data for just that point. But, I think the takeaway over here is what are the search terms that Bankrate started promoting? And the answer is things that have the word calculator in it. Using tools, trying to drive the tools that they have and distribute those tools and get people to do that, whether those are loan calculators, CD rate calculators, amortization calculators, so much so that when we start looking at the paid search traffic that's coming out of Bankrate, you see a 700% increase in paid search terms that have the word calculator. And we could actually look at the weighting of which of those search terms actually is providing them the greatest amount of traffic by weight. And if you clicked on one of them, you would suddenly see a very nice landing page where you could fill in some information. From a consumer perspective, this is highly valuable content. Previously, they were able to get that off of organic search, and today they're having to pay for it because of changes in Google's algorithm or the like. So did the strategy work? So the answer is yes, from a visitor perspective. In other words, if you look at this graph, they were able to replace that revenue or those visitors and ultimately the revenue using paid search. But as I mentioned, at what cost, right? Now we know what the cost is. And here, that's something that's very, very interesting as you start thinking about this. The funny insight is that we looked at our data on worldwide PPC, again, paid search traffic, on the word calculator. Anything that has the word calculator in it. And it turns out that the number one company, right, who had domain for any search term in the aggregate that contains the word calculator is actually Bankrate.com, as opposed to any one of the dozens of retailers, including Walmart and eBay, who actually sell physical calculators. So this was a major change that they've done in order to drive that traffic up, and ultimately it actually paid off for them. So what's the takeaway? As I said before, these are two examples, both of them US-based affiliates. And what's the relevance that has for today, for us today here in the UK market? So if I think about Bankrate as an example, the word calculator, if I segregate that exclusively for the UK market, drives 2% of all paid and organic search in the UK finance category. If I think about NerdWallet and their strategy of what, best, and how, that drives just under 2% of all organic search in the UK finance industry. Again, here being about paid and organic search, here being about organic search alone. So there's a significant opportunity over here to capture market share for these companies to use the same, or a competitor to use similar strategies here in the UK market. When we start thinking about what is it, really how big is that opportunity? So the number of desktop visits that were in the UK we looked at the top 100 finance destination sites in the UK. It drove 272 million visits for the month of September. If we go back to that first slide that we looked at, or one of the first slides that we looked at, and we saw the 22% of the visits to the finance industry here in the UK being driven from search, you're talking about 60 million search visits that are available on a monthly basis from search for the finance industry here in the UK. And I think that the takeaway over here is understanding what drives the market, understanding what drives consumers, and using effective data and insight to capture market share is a large opportunity available here in the UK in the finance sector. So people sometimes ask me, is it really critical? This is one of my favorite quotes. Without data, you're just a person with an opinion. We like to say in our company, data wins arguments or beats arguments. You could have an opinion, you could have an argument, you could have a gut feeling, but when you're able to base that decision or able to base your argument with real hard facts and real hard data, that changes it. And today, there are tools like SimilarWeb that are available for you to get near real-time insights by industry, by line of business, by country, across channels, both for desktop web, mobile web, and mobile app. And that's something that we pride ourselves on to be able to provide that kind of insights to our customers by cross-vertical with a great amount of granularity, as you're seeing here, in over 190 countries around the globe. And as people here like to say, who knows wins. And with that, I'll pause here and ask anybody if there are any questions. Other questions? Go ahead, please.
Hello? Perfect. About measuring via a sort of data analytics point of view, third-party impacts on your search. So for instance, the impact of public relations, if you, like you mentioned, getting quoted in Financial Times, Bloomberg, etc. If you're undertaking those strategies and you're getting quoted quite a lot and there's links going back to your website, what is the best way of measuring that effectively and demonstrating the impact on clicks or revenue or your search engine capabilities?
Excellent question. So we have a number of ways that we're able to help measure that, or that you can measure it yourself. And again, on your own data, you should be able to be tagging all these pages or tagging sources. We're able in our data to see where traffic visits are coming from. And when I say coming from, not only that it's from a referral site, but which referral site. Not only from which referral site, but what page within or what content within that. And as I say, ultimately, there was a slide here that I showed from our popular pages feature to show exactly which pages are getting the most hits and which content is the thing that people are actually reading. When it's search, right, we're able to see, or you're able to see, what are the search terms that are driving the most traffic, whether those are branded or unbranded, and which ones are driving more of your paid traffic versus your organic traffic. Now, the interesting thing is not only which is it doing it for you or your company. I think the more interesting thing is what are those search terms, or what are those strategies, or what is that content that is driving that kind of traffic, high quality traffic, to your competitors. And that's really where, this type of market intelligence is most helpful, because we don't only show you the traffic on your site. Quite frankly, you don't need SimilarWeb to do that. You probably have your own Google Analytics to tell you that kind of stuff. But what we're able to do is put your data in context of the market and the competitive reality, and show you what are the strategies that your competitors are using, what are the strategies that companies like you are using in other territories and being successful. Remember, NerdWallet is not here in the UK. It's a US-based company, but that strategy of best, how, what makes up 2% of the organic search terms here in the UK. If you know how to use that effectively, that's a 2% market opportunity that's available to you of a near 300 million number of monthly searches that are there. And I think those are the kinds of things that you can get out of data analytics. Again, whether you're using your own internal tools or using other services that'll give you that perspective and context from what's going on in the market.
That's perfect, thank you.
Great. Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. How accurate is the data in SimilarWeb?
Now you're asking a CFO that question, huh? We think highly accurate. And it's not us who think so. It's the nature of how we go about, and the unique strategies that we use to gather the data and forecast the data and predict the data. but more importantly, it's our customers telling us, and the independent, bloggers and content writers who are measuring us against other sources always score us with the highest scores of accuracy. We think we're very proud of that and humbled by that, but I think it's one of the fundamental things that we strive for. To say that it's going to be a perfect 100% one-to-one, never going to say that. By definition, we're looking at a sample of data and extract from our panel and other sources and extrapolating that out to the what's going on in the digital world. And so we look at that as a indication, and the results are the results. 3,200 customers around the globe rely and trust on our data.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and thank you again for the opportunity to meet with you today.